10 Australia cities flooded with Americans. 15,000 Americans moved to Australia last year. That's a 67% increase since 2019. But here's what's wild. They're not spreading out evenly. They're flooding 10 specific cities. And what's happening there is actually reshaping entire communities. One city saw its American population triple in just 18 months. Local cafes now serve bottomless coffee. Real estate agents are learning baseball terms. And some Australians are straight up asking, are we becoming America 2.0? But wait, before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment, I subscribe below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Let me introduce you to Sarah Chun. She's 34, used to work in tech in San Francisco. She sold her one-bedroom condo for $890,000 and bought a four-bedroom house in Brisbane for $650,000 US. She told me, I was spending $4,200 a month just to exist in San Francisco. Here, I'm saving $2,000 monthly and have a backyard. But Sarah's story isn't unique anymore, and that's creating tension in places you'd never expect. The surprise entry. Adelaide wasn't even on the radar 3 years ago. Here's the stat that'll blow your mind. 340% increase in American residents since 2021, according to the South Australian Migration Report from 2024. 340%. So why are Americans suddenly obsessed with Adelaide? 3 reasons. Wine country lifestyle at 40% the cost of Napa Valley. A tech hub emerging around defense contracts and the space industry. And it's what they call a 20-minute city. Everything's walkable. That's basically unheard of in America, unless you're in Manhattan and paying $5,000 a month for a studio. I spoke with David Rodriguez. He's 41, aerospace engineer, moved from LA. He told me, I'm working on satellite projects that would have cost $200 million in California. Here, we're doing it for $60 million with better work-life balance. His kids bike to school safely now, something he never felt comfortable with back in LA. But here's the tension point. Housing prices in North Adelaide neighborhoods are up 23%. Locals are noticing, and they're not all thrilled. Still, Adelaide's a quiet one. Wait until you see what's happening in the coastal cities. Miami vibes without the hurricanes. Or the crime rate. The numbers, over 2,100 American expats now, up from 780 in 2020. That's almost a 3x increase. Why are they flooding here? Beach lifestyle plus actual safety. Miami's violent crime rate is 593 per 100,000 people. Gold Coast, 89 per 100,000. That's not a typo. Then you've got remote work paradise. Australia's internet speeds now rival the U.S. Theme parks, surf culture, eternal summer. It's basically Florida if Florida was safe and functional. Meet Jessica and Tom Morrison, ages 38 and 42, left Fort Lauderdale. Jessica said something that stuck with me. Our daughter was 7. We were terrified of school shootings. That was the final straw. They're now running a digital marketing agency from Burley Heads. Tom told me, I see my kids more in a week here than I did in a month back home. Here's the weird part. American-style diners and barbecue joints are popping up everywhere. Some locals are calling it Gold Coast, USA. And that's not always meant as a compliment. Gold Coast is a lifestyle play. But the next city? That's where American money is actually changing the economy. OECD migration statistics from 2024 show that Australia is now the number 3 destination for American immigrants, behind Canada and the UK, but growing faster than both. Why? Political polarization exhaustion, mass shooting anxiety. Parents with kids under 18 are the fastest growing demographic leaving, and healthcare costs. Even with insurance, Americans pay an average of $1,200 out of pocket per year. In Australia, $350. These aren't vacation choices. These are families making permanent decisions based on fear, hope, and literal spreadsheets they're running at midnight. Tasmania. Really? Yes. And here's why it's genius. American population up 290% since 2020. Smallest raw numbers on this list, but the highest growth rate. Why the unexpected surge? It's got Portland and Vermont vibes at 50% the cost. Artists, writers, remote workers who are craving slow living are moving there. Stunning nature, progressive culture, small town feel. It's like if Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls was real and had mountains. Rachel Kowalski, 45, novelist from Brooklyn. She told me, I was paying $3,400 for a studio in Williamsburg. Here, I rent a cottage with mountain views for $1,200. She finished her book in 6 months. She'd been stuck on it for 3 years in New York City. The silence was shocking at first, she said. Now I can't imagine going back to sirens at 2 a.m. The catch? Limited job market. Fine if you work remotely. Tough if you don't. But Hobart's art scene is exploding with American funding and participation. Hobart's the introvert's choice. But the next city? That's where extroverted Americans are building actual communities. The most isolated major city on earth. And Americans are obsessed with it. The numbers for 800 plus Americans, 180% increase since 2019. Why Perth? Mining boom money. American engineers are making $180,000 to $250,000. California weather without California prices. Pristine beaches that every local can actually pronounce. And there's a time zone advantage for Asia-Pacific business. Marcus and Emily Chun, both petroleum engineers, ages 36 and 33, moved from Houston. Marcus said, we tripled our savings rate, bought a house in 2 years instead of 15. Their kids say, mate, now, identity blending is happening in real time. But here's where it gets interesting, cultural tension. American work culture is clashing with Australia's, she'll be right, attitude. I heard a story about an American demanding late-night emails and an Aussie boss literally saying, it's 6 p.m., go home. Different worlds. Surprise element? American-style Thanksgiving is becoming a thing in Perth. Grocery stores now stock cranberry sauce year-round. That wasn't happening in 2020. Perth's for the adventure capitalists. But the top 6 cities? That's where the real transformation is happening. Numbeo Cost of Living Index, 2024. Sydney rent is 30% cheaper than San Francisco. Melbourne is 40% cheaper than New York City. Brisbane, 50% cheaper than Seattle. The healthcare bombshell. An American family of 4 pays an average of $24,000 per year for insurance plus out-of-pocket costs. An Australian family pays effectively zero through Medicare. But there's a catch. Australia isn't giving this away free. There's a tax reality you need to know about before you even think about moving. We'll get to that. The capital no one talks about. Now the DC of the Pacific for American government contractors. The numbers, 1,900 Americans, 210% increase. Smallest city on this list, but the most strategic. Why are they here? Defense industry boom, thanks to the AUKUS agreement. American contractors are on $200,000 to $400,000 packages. And Canberra has the highest percentage of degree holders in Australia. It's basically if Washington, D.C. was safe, affordable, and people were friendly. Lieutenant Colonel James Whitmore, retired, 52, from Virginia. He told me, I'm consulting on submarine tech. The irony? I have more impact here than I did at the Pentagon. His wife teaches American history at Australian National University. Our grocery bills are lower. Our stress is lower. Our impact is higher. Unique factor. An American school is opening in 2025 because of demand from contractor families. But here's the tension. Some Australians are uneasy about increasing American military influence. Not everyone's happy about this. Canberra is the power move. But the top 5 cities? These are the ones every American has Googled at 2 a.m. when they can't sleep, where Hollywood goes to hide, and now, where Silicon Valley goes to reset. Not technically a city, it's a region, but there are 2,400 Americans in Byron Shire. That's a 420% increase. Why the explosion? wellness culture paradise, yoga, organic everything, spiritual healing. Tech founders retiring at 35, and Chris Hemsworth lives there. Americans want that proximity to fame and nature. Amanda Torres, 39, sold her startup in Austin for $18 million. She said, "I was having panic attacks daily." Burned out at 37. Now she teaches meditation, surfs daily, and invested in a local eco-resort. "I make 5% of what I used to. I'm 500% happier." But here's the dark side. Ultra-wealthy Americans are pricing out locals. The median house price jumped from $1.1 million to $2.8 million between 2019 and 2024. You'll see Silicon Bay graffiti. There's tension at town halls. One American told me, "It's beautiful until you realize you're part of the problem." Byron Bay is a fantasy, but the top 4 cities? That's where normal Americans are actually building real lives. Australian Department of Home Affairs, 2024 Migration Policy Update. You can't just show up. Here's the reality. Skilled migration visa. You need an in-demand job. Tech, healthcare, trades. Student visa pathway, 2 to 4 years of study. Then work rights. Partner visa. You need relationship proof. Investment visa, $1.5 million minimum, and it's getting tougher. But these Americans in the top 4 cities, they found the loopholes. Brisbane's cooler sibling, and the family favorite for American parents. The numbers, 3,200 Americans, 380% increase. This is the fastest growing destination specifically for families. Why do families choose it? Beach towns plus excellent schools plus affordable living. It's 90 minutes from Brisbane, city access without city stress. And the crime rate is 70% lower than comparable U.S. coastal cities. The Patterson family. Jake, 40, Maria, 38, kids age 7, 9, and 12. They left Charlotte, North Carolina. Jake told me, "My daughter asked why her school has lockdown drills. She was 6. We started planning that day." They moved in 2023. Jake works remotely for a U.S. tech company now. Maria said, "My kids walk to the beach after school. Alone. Safely. That's worth everything." And here's a study finding that'll hit you. American children in Australia show a 40% reduction in anxiety symptoms within 18 months. The education factor is huge. Australian schools are ranked higher internationally. No active shooter drills. Lower academic pressure. American sports leagues are forming there. Cultural events. It's becoming a real community. A family of 4 can live comfortably on $85,000 US. In a similar U.S. location, you need $120,000 plus. Sunshine Coast is where American families find peace. But the top 3 cities? These are the economic powerhouses. The Austin of Australia. And Americans are noticing. The numbers, 8,700 Americans officially, but estimated 12,000 plus unofficially. Why the surge? 2032 Olympics. Construction boom. Opportunity everywhere. Tech hub rising. Amazon, Boeing, multiple startups setting up there. It's affordable compared to Sydney and Melbourne. And subtropical weather. 270 plus sunny days a year. Kevin Olatunde, 44, software architect from Boston. "I was making $220,000 in Boston, paying $3,600 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Freezing half the year. Now he makes $185,000 Australian dollars, which is about $120,000 US. Pays $2,200 for a 3-bedroom house with a pool. I took a pay cut on paper. My quality of life increased 10 times. His kids swim outdoors in winter. The economic impact is real. There are 340 plus new American-owned businesses in the Brisbane metro area, according to 2024 Business Registry data. Entire suburbs are shifting. West End is now 12% American. The American accent is becoming normal in certain industries. American chains are appearing, Costco, Trader Joe-style stores. But Brisbane locals are split. Some welcome the growth. Others fear Americanization. Brisbane's booming. But the top 2 cities? That's where the real cultural collision is happening. University of Sydney Cultural Integration Study, 2024. Here are the findings. 67% of Americans report easier cultural adaptation than expected. But, and this is important, 43% of locals in high American areas report cultural fatigue. Specific tensions? Tipping culture. Americans trying to tip everywhere. Australians getting annoyed. Loudness. Americans are objectively louder in public spaces. Work-life boundary differences. Americans checking emails at dinner. Australians horrified. But here's the surprise. 78% of Australians with American neighbors report positive relationships after 6 months. Initial friction, then friendship. One Australian put it perfectly. We're not replacing Australian culture. We're blending. And that's making some people uncomfortable. The most livable city for a reason. And Americans are buying hard. The numbers, 18,500 plus Americans. This is the largest American community outside Sydney. Why Melbourne? Arts, culture, coffee obsession. American cafe owners are actually thriving there. Startup ecosystem, especially fintech and biotech. European city vibes without European prices. And sports obsession. Americans are falling in love with AFL now, which is weird but true. Zoe Martinez, 31, graphic designer from Portland. She told me, Melbourne feels like Portland plus Sydney plus better weather. She started a design agency. Now employs 12 people, 8 Australian for American. I was drowning in student debt. Here, I paid it off in 3 years because my living costs dropped 45%. She's dating an Australian now. Cultural learning curve. He was shocked I'd never heard of a snag. It's a sausage. I thought he was speaking another language. The economic transformation is massive. American-Australian startups are raising record funding. Cross-Pacific business partnerships are up 190%. Melbourne is positioning itself as the bridge between the U.S. and Asia-Pacific. The cultural scene is shifting too. American comedy shows, food festivals. Thanksgiving is becoming mainstream there. But here's the tension. Housing crisis. It's blamed partly on foreign buyers, and Americans get lumped into that category. Melbourne welcomes Americans financially, but culturally asks them to adapt, not dominate. Melbourne's sophisticated, but the number one city? It's where the American dream is being completely redefined. The crown jewel, and the city where American money is reshaping everything. The numbers, 32,000 plus Americans officially. Estimated 45,000 plus unofficially. This is the largest American population in the southern hemisphere outside Latin America. Why does Sydney win? Global city status, finance, tech, media all have major presences there. It's iconic. Opera House, Harbor Bridge, Instagram ready. Job opportunities that actually match American salaries. International school system makes it easier for American kids. And direct flights to the U.S. That emotional safety net matters when you're 10,000 miles from home. Let me tell you about the Rodriguez-Williams family. This is a story that explains everything. Carlos, 42, and Jennifer, 40, from Manhattan, arrived in 2021 with 2 kids. Carlos was an investment banker, making $340,000 US in New York City. Now he makes $280,000 Australian dollars plus bonuses. Jennifer was a marketing director. Now she started her own consulting firm. Carlos told me, we sold our 1,100 square foot apartment for $1.8 million. Bought a 2,200 square foot house in Manly for $2.1 million Australian dollars. That's $1.4 million USD. We have ocean views and a yard. But here's what got me. Their kids' transformation. Jennifer said, in New York City, our son had anxiety medication at age 9. Here, he's off them. He surfs before school. The hard part? We miss family. Thanksgiving over Zoom breaks my heart. But our kids are healthier, safer, happier. 3 years later, Carlos said, we're never going back. We're Australian now with American accents. The economic earthquake Sydney's experiencing is real. American buyers account for 8.5% of luxury real estate sales, over $2 million in Sydney. Specific neighborhoods. Mosman is 14% American. Manly, 11%. North Sydney, 9%. American businesses in Sydney, 2,100 plus, according to the 2024 Business Registry. Entire economic sectors are being influenced. Fintech, film production, tech startups. The cultural impact is everywhere. American schools are expanding. 4th of July celebrations are growing. Some Australians join now. American sports bars are packed. NFL Sundays are Monday mornings in Australia. So Americans are waking up at 3 a.m. to watch football. Language is blending. Australian kids are saying, awesome, and dude, now. But let's talk about the backlash reality. There's a housing affordability crisis, and some Australians blame foreign buyers. The Americans are loud stereotype gets reinforced in crowded areas. Workplace culture clashes. American hustle mentality versus Australian work-life balance. But here's the integration success story. A study shows 81% of Americans in Sydney report successful integration after 2 years. Mixed marriages are increasing. American-Australian couples are up 240%. A second generation is emerging. American parents with Australian-born kids who have blended identities. The future projection? Sydney's American population is expected to hit 60,000 by 2027, which raises a bigger question. At what point is it too many? And who gets to decide? Australian National University Migration Impact Study, 2024. The opinion is divided. Economic benefit. Americans bring capital, skills, entrepreneurship. That's undeniable. Housing crisis. Foreign buyers, including Americans, raise prices. That's also undeniable. Cultural exchange. Is it positive blending or American dominance? Depends who you ask. One Australian economist put it perfectly. American migration is good for GDP, complicated for affordability, and challenging for identity. We're navigating uncharted territory. From the American perspective, one expat told me, we're not invading. We're seeking safety, sanity, and a better life for our kids. That's human. That's not controversial. This is the largest sustained American immigration wave to a single region since the Vietnam War era. Let that sink in. It's driven by fear, gun violence, political instability, and opportunity. Remote work revolution, affordable living. And here's the kicker. It's permanent. 72% of Americans in Australia say they'll never move back. Never. Let me leave you with one more story. Elena Johnson, 36, from Denver. Her daughter, age 8, asked her, Mommy, if there's a bad guy at school, where do I hide? Elena told me that was the moment. We've been talking about moving, but that question, I started the visa application that night. Now she's in Sydney. My daughter doesn't know what a lockdown drill is. She's 10 now. That innocence? That's what we bought with this move. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Is America's loss Australia's gain? Or are we watching the beginning of a global reshuffling where safety, healthcare, and sanity determine migration more than opportunity? So here's what we've seen. 10 cities, tens of thousands of Americans, billions in economic impact. But underneath all those numbers, families choosing peace over patriotism, safety over salaries, future over familiarity. By 2030, Australia could have 100,000 plus Americans. That's larger than many entire Australian country towns. These Americans left what's supposed to be the greatest country on earth for a better life. What does that tell us about America? And what does it tell us about what people actually value when they're given the choice? So here's my question for you. If money was an issue and visas were guaranteed, would you leave your country for a safer, slower, more affordable life somewhere else? Or is there something keeping you rooted that's worth more than all of that? Drop your answer below. I'm genuinely curious where you all stand on this. Because based on these numbers, this conversation is just getting started.